For any homeowner, it's got to be one of the biggest fears. That little drip you find under the sink, or that faint water spot that suddenly appears on the ceiling. You clean it up, sure, but the real worry is, what's happening where you can't see? What's lurking behind that wall? Well, in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden risks of wet drywall. So the big question we're tackling today is right here. Will mold always grow on wet drywall? And you know what? The answer might just surprise you, because it's not a simple yes or no. The real key is understanding what makes drywall so uniquely vulnerable in the first place.
All right, let's start with a scenario I think we can all picture. It almost always begins with something that seems really small, almost insignificant.
Maybe it's a slow drip from a pipe under the bathroom sink, just like you see here. You might tighten a connection, throw a towel down, and think, okay, problem solved. But here's the thing. While you might have stopped the source, the damage has already started, silently, inside that wall cavity.
And this right here is the crucial point. The puddle on the floor, that's not the real threat. The true danger comes from the moisture that has been silently wicked away, soaked up into the building materials you can't even see.
So, to really get why this happens, we have to look at the science of the most common material in our walls. Because it's not just a flat board, it's basically a structural sponge.
So drywall, you might also hear it called gypsum board, is a composite material. Think of it like a sandwich. It's got a core made of a soft mineral called gypsum, and that core is pressed between two sheets of paper. The critical thing to remember is that both parts, the gypsum and the paper, are incredibly absorbent. And right there, that's the problem. That paper on the outside isn't just absorbent, it's organic. It's made of cellulose, and for mold, that's not just a home, it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Once you add water to the mix, you've basically just served up the perfect meal.
So when you think about it, the recipe for a mold disaster is surprisingly simple. You need moisture, check, you've got the leak. You need an organic food source, check, that's the paper on the drywall. And then you need the final critical ingredient, time. And out of those three, time is the only one you have any control over after a leak has happened.
And hey, that's not just an opinion, that's the professional standard. The IICR, that stands for the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. They're the ones who set the guidelines for the entire restoration industry, and their rules are crystal clear. You have to start mitigation immediately. Every single hour that goes by gives mold a better and better chance to take hold, turning a simple water problem into a much more serious and expensive mold problem.
Okay, so this brings us to one of the absolute biggest and most dangerous myths out there. The idea that if you touch the wall and it feels dry, then you must be in the clear. That assumption could be a huge mistake.
So why is that a myth? Simple. Drywall dries from the outside in. This picture shows you exactly what I mean. The surface can feel bone dry to your hand, but deep inside, the gypsum core can still be completely saturated. And that hidden moisture? That's your ticking time bomb, just sitting there, continuing to feed potential mold growth deep inside your wall.
So if you can't even trust your own hands, how in the world do you find the water that's hiding deep inside? Well, this is where professional technology completely changes the game.
Yeah, how do we answer that? The answer is you need tools that can literally see what our eyes just can't.
First up, we've got the thermal imaging camera. Now, a lot of people think these cameras actually see water. They don't. They see temperature. But here's the trick. Materials that are wet are cooler because of evaporation. So the camera shows these cool, damp spots as a different color, like the deep purples and blues you see here, instantly mapping out the hidden spread of the water damage.
Okay, so the thermal scan points you in the right direction. It shows you the potential problem spots. The next step is confirmation. And for that, you use a professional moisture meter. This gives you the definitive proof, the hard numbers. It measures the exact percentage of moisture inside the material, telling you not just if it's wet, but how wet it is. There's absolutely no guesswork involved.
All right, so once you know exactly where the water is and just how bad it is, the road to recovery can finally begin. And trust me, it's a highly scientific process called structural drying.
And this isn't just about, setting up a few fans and hoping for the best. No, it's a systematic, three-step process. First, you isolate and contain the area. Second, you use specialized equipment to create powerful, targeted airflow. And third, you deploy industrial-strength dehumidifiers to physically pull all that moisture out of the air. First up, step 1, containment. Professionals build these plastic barriers to completely seal off the wet area from the rest of the house. This is so important because it does two critical things. 1, it prevents any nasty particles or mold spores from spreading everywhere, and 2, it creates a smaller, controlled space so the drying equipment can work way more efficiently.
Next up, airflow. And look, these are not your average box fans. These are high-velocity air movers, and they're positioned strategically to create a vortex of air that rushes across all the wet surfaces. This massively speeds up evaporation, literally pulling that trapped moisture out from deep inside the drywall and lifting it up into the air.
Okay, but think about it. Now you've got all this moisture that was stuck in the walls, and it's just floating around in the air. If you just open a window, you're actually risking it reabsorbing right back into other dry materials. So you need one more crucial step.
And that is where commercial dehumidifiers come in. These powerful machines are the workhorses of the operation. They suck in all that moist air, condense the vapor back into liquid water, and collect it. We're talking about machines that physically pull gallons of water right out of the air, making sure the structure gets completely, totally, and permanently dry.
So this all leads to the big question, right? Does wet drywall always have to be ripped out? Well, not necessarily. It really boils down to a few key things. If the water was clean, say from a supply line, and drying started right away, it's often salvageable. But if the water was contaminated, like from a sewer backup, or if the drywall sat wet for a long time, removal is pretty much always the safest bet.
So here's the main takeaway from all of this. We started this whole thing by asking, will mold grow? But by now, you probably realized that's actually the wrong question. The real question, the one that truly matters, is, was the drywall dried correctly and completely? See, mold isn't a matter of luck. It's a direct result of an incomplete job.
Because really, at the end of the day, the real enemy here is unresolved moisture. That's the root cause of mold, of rot, and of poor indoor air quality. Making sure you get a complete, professionally managed, and verified dry down isn't just about fixing the immediate problem, it's the only way to truly protect your home and prevent much bigger issues down the road.